Hello and welcome to the Change Game podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life, from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the week, Change Gang. I have an amazing woman with me today, Helen Wyer with us today, and she is an incredible hypnotherapist and is on a wonderful journey of healing people. And so thank you for being here with me today, Helen. I totally appreciate it.
You're more than welcome, and I'm really thrilled that you asked me to be a guest.
So you have quite the little adventures in life and have moved around a little bit and had some fun, and you zeroed in on working with hypnosis as a way to help people clear a lot of different things. I know that you've kind of niched down or come into a niche, but in this particular instance, I want to talk a little bit about what brought you to the journey of working with hypnosis, first of all.
I'd like to say to you that one day I woke up and I thought, do you know what? Hey, I want to be a hypnotherapist. I'll be really honest with you. I had never ever even heard of the word. I'd heard of hypnosis or hypnotist mostly through TV stuff, stage shows and all the rest of it. Didn't even know there was a thing called hypnotherapy or anything. But I used to be a teacher, and I was a deputy head of a primary school, and we did a lot of teaching and mentoring student teachers, and we got well known in our vicinity. And I was sent on a couple of coaching courses because it's like, okay, we'll coach these student teachers through their journey. I remember sitting in one of the training courses. Well, a couple of things stood out for me. So one was I teach my students in a coaching style. I wasn't aware of it. Nobody had said to me, you teach in a coaching style. It's just a style that I've kind of developed because my head teacher had said, Helen, we've got a problem. Your students are here and we've got to get them there, bridge that gap. It was like, oh, I'm good, but I'm not a miracle worker. So it was like, oh, actually, I've been doing this. And also it was the energy in the room, because it wasn't just teachers on this course, it was all sorts of people. Now, anybody that's, I don't know what it's like in the States, but a lot of teachers are the bureaucracy, the paperwork, all this kind of stuff. We were ground down, and including me. So going on a course where everybody was so excited about what they were doing, the results, all this kind of stuff, it really opened my eyes, and it was infectious. It was really infectious. So after that, I made a couple of connections, and people started talking about this thing called NLP. I asked the school whether they could fund me for that, but no, if you want to do that, you do it your own resources. So which I did, and I really loved it, but I never felt it quite went far enough. But also, I think people I met on that course started talking about things like hypnotherapy and all the rest of it, and that piqued my interest. And then we had the year from hell at school in so many different ways, and I was totally on my knees in every single way you can possibly imagine, physically, emotionally. A very good friend of mine sadly got breast cancer and passed away in such a short space of time. And I can remember thinking, Helen, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing? You're going to be that person soon. I just got myself qualified, and it was very much, this has got to work because I need to still make a living. And it's a very good motivating factor to get your business up and running, because I didn't really have the time for saying, well, when my website's brilliant, when my this, that, and the other. Please, by the way, if anybody looks at my website, I really do know it needs an awful lot of work. It was written very hurriedly, and I've been so busy working with clients ever since, I've actually not had the time to go back to it to sort it out. But it was a very good motivating thing to say, I've got to start this off, and what do I do? How do I get clients and all this sort of business? So that's, in a nutshell, that's how it all started off.
Yes, that is a motivator when it's like, okay, have to do this now. Let's do this. Let's make this work. And oh my goodness, that's the journey of so many people too, and teachers especially. Oh my goodness, the stress and the pressure. It's so much. And I don't think people realize how much it is. If you have your child at home, you know that's a lot. Can you imagine having 30 of those children?
With all different needs and all different ability range and things like that.
Yeah. And that can be, oh my goodness, that can just throw you into overwhelm. And then unfortunately there is all of the stuff behind it, all of the administrative stuff. And sometimes that's supportive and unfortunately sometimes it is not. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to go and meet these people who were feeling encouraged and go into that. So that led you down a path of working with clients and managing. You mentioned to me when we kind of had a little chat before this that you really enjoyed working with the people that had anxiety and helping them through some of that. What really led you into that? Was that your own anxiety? Was that kind of clearing your own thing or just seeing that with the people that you were around?
So at the beginning, I used to be primary school. I think you guys in America call it, so up to age 11, it's a primary school. So I'd been used to switching really quickly in a school day from teaching maths for 1 hour to going to English, history, all this sort of stuff. So I remember when I first started out, when everybody saying to me, Helen, you need to find a niche. You really need to specialize in something, and thinking, well, I've never done this before. How do I do that? Do I just go, well, I'll just do this because on a Tuesday it floats my boat? And then I ended up thinking, well, I think I'll just do a little bit of everything and see what happens. And very soon I began, because again, I've probably done quite unorthodox my journey in the way I've done things. So I'd help somebody out there and then I'd get another phone call or an email from somebody, will you help my friend? Can you help me? And more I was noticing that actually it was mostly after about 6 months or so, it was mostly to do with anxiety. And I think without realizing, I probably subtly put off some clients. So I recognized very early on that weight loss just wasn't really my thing, just wasn't particularly interested in it and all the rest of it. So if I had an inquiry, I probably, without realizing, if you'd have said to me at the time, are you putting these people off? I'd have gone, no, Laura, of course I'm not. But I think probably I was, just because I was like, yeah, all right, then I'll see you on Friday if I must. Whereas I'd really, really enjoy working with, because there's nothing more rewarding than seeing somebody who's given you a call and said, look, I can't get on an aeroplane, or I can't even hardly go out of my house. I'm anxious in any and every situation. I just feel rubbish. And then a few sessions later, they're going, oh my goodness, I'm flying around the world and I'm meeting up with people. I'm doing things I've never thought I would do. And looking at it objectively, a lot of teaching was about encouragement, confidence building, saying, yes, you can do this, guys. I know you feel that you're not ever going to be able to meet these targets, all the rest of it. You will, you can, and all this. And it was almost adapting and using the skills that I'd used in teaching into a one-to-one environment. And again, I went into teaching to make a difference. Of course I did. Nobody goes in it for the money. It got sort of, all sorts of reasons why that became just a small part of my teaching life. Whereas this, I was like, oh my goodness, this person's doing this. Oh my goodness. And it was just so exciting. It really, really was. Again, they would recommend friends, family, colleagues, all the rest of it. So locally, I began to build up a bit of a reputation, and it all sort of carried on from there.
Wow. And so when you started to kind of dig into working with anxiety, I'm going to lead this into trauma a little bit, because the way that you told me you ended up working in basically the quote unquote niche that you're in now was through this process of seeing what kept coming up and what the work was. And so with the trauma, let me just ask you, when you say working with someone with trauma, what does that mean for you?
All of us have had some element of trauma in our lives. Now, some people, I've heard it described as trauma with a big capital T and trauma with a small t. I came to just say trauma is trauma. It's something that has very, very much upset us and had a huge impact on us at the time. So for one person, it might be a beloved pet passing away. For another person, it might have been in a very abusive relationship. And I use abusive very generally because it could be sexual abuse, it could be domestic abuse, this sort of stuff. Somebody else might have been involved in a train crash. There's a variety of what trauma is. And of course, we're not robots. It's going to have an effect on the physiology and on the psychology. And a lot of people that I've worked with anxiety, they have grown up in homes where trauma is prevalent, or they've been just terrified in that environment. I just had somebody in last week and she said, my childhood memories, most of all the ones I can remember as being absolutely terrified of my father coming home from work because he used to beat them, her mother and the sisters and her. And she said the number of times we slept in bed in our clothes in case we had to run away really, really quickly. I know from a teaching point of view, that's going to have a huge impact on that person for the rest of their life. Of course it is.
Yeah. And do you find that people, at least I've found, so I'm curious if you found that people often come and when you start working with them, they didn't understand or they didn't realize or they just don't remember something that happened that kind of set the anchor or set the root in place for the things coming forward, for those symptoms that show up later in life. And oftentimes people just say, it's just my life. That's how it was. It's funny how you don't associate something until you do. They hear about abuse, they hear about trauma, they hear about all these things, and it's just something that's out there. There's no connection to themselves. And then all of a sudden, you might be 20 years old, 40 years old. There's this little thing that clicks and it's like, oh, that's me. I dealt with that. I had that in my life. And all of a sudden there's this different way. And then all of the emotions that come along with that. And you never know when that's going to happen. It can happen as a teenager. It can happen when you're 50. It can happen anywhere. But before that happens, sometimes if you get lucky and you come meet with someone like us, you're able to go back and kind of clear that root. And so when you're working with someone and you go and you get to the root of the issue, do you find that the other things kind of automatically just go away, the symptom?
Absolutely. And it always still fascinates me. And I find quite amazing how, like you said there, we don't know something until we know something. So often in my very first sessions with people, before I actually do too much of the hypnosis side of it, it's what I would call normalizing what is happening in mind, body, whatever it is actually normal because of all the experiences you've been through. And for a lot of people, that's a huge light bulb moment, but it's also a huge relief because quite often they think they're abnormal. They think their mind, their body is out to get them. You hear this kind of language. And it's like, no, actually, your mind is doing what it was designed to do. Your body is doing what it was designed to do. I know it feels super freaking horrible, but it is not anything abnormal. And I find that takes a lot of the fear out of, and just a little, I don't spend hours. I just say a quick 5-minute explanation of what's been going on. And this is why you're feeling like you are right now today. You often see people just automatically go, oh my goodness, nobody's ever told me that before. Nobody has explained those links. And that's, I find, a big part of what I do.
It is. And then once you have that explanation in place, it's like, okay, let's go fix this now. And the magic of the hypnosis going in and having that conversation with the subconscious and changing the things that need to be changed at that very base level, at that programming that's been there for so long, or that clearing the anchor that was put in place for the trauma, for the difficulty, for the whatever, whether you remember it or not, and being able to kind of pull the root out and then move forward and go, oh, I can breathe again. I can do this.
Because again, it's sometimes people go, oh, this is so deep-seated, this is really deep-rooted, or something like that. And it's almost breaking that kind of belief. And so I often say, do you know what? I said, I'm a gardener. I said, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I'm going along. I said, what I have learned is you need different tools for different jobs. And I said, sometimes I go out and in my veggie bed, I'll see a few weeds. And as I'm walking with the dogs, I'll just pick them out with my fingers. Fine. Then I might need a trowel because something's a little bit deeper rooted. Then I might have to go and think, oh, do you know what? I need a spade or a shovel or something like that. And if there's a tree in there that's got slightly, I need a different tool. It may be a little one of those little diggers that you can hire or something like that. But there is a tool for that. It doesn't mean to say because something's very deep rooted that means it's going to be much, much harder to get rid of. It's using the right tool in the right circumstance. And I find that really helpful to explain it like that to people.
Yes. When I talk to people and I talk to them about the sessions I have, I talk in weeks, but that's literally only hours in the lifetime because it's an hour, hour and a half at a time over the course of a few weeks. I usually anchor in about 6 or 7 or something like that for someone just to do whatever. But sometimes everything is cleared in a couple of sessions. It's different for everyone. And it can be very deeply rooted. It can be way back to being a year old and having no clue that this one little incident is what's grown this big thing in your life. But when you do go back and pluck that little sliver out that's stuck way down deep in there and you move it forward, it's like there's nothing there. It's like it heals up, it's gone, you move on, and it's amazing. And so even when we're talking in weeks of, oh, we can clear this in weeks or we can do this, it's literally hours we're talking about. And it amazes me because I know that some people struggle for so long. They struggle with anxiety, with IBS, with chronic fatigue, with all of these things that show up in their life, or maybe they've been dealing with for a while. They may not even understand. It's like, I don't know, all of a sudden this happened. I have IBS now and I have no clue. I haven't changed anything. I haven't done anything, but it's because of something that's there that's now changed in the subconscious. And the subconscious is saying, actually, we need attention. We're still trying to keep you safe, but there's this little sliver that's back here that we're still doing. And so when you find that you're working with the people that you're sharing that with them, okay, it's these tools. Do you find the surprise in them when it is?
Absolutely. And it always makes me chuckle. So when people leave a review, and I would say 90% of them start off with, I was highly skeptical. And then they'll say things like, it truly was life-changing and things like that. But as I say, it always makes me giggle when somebody goes, well, I'm really skeptical. And I said, fine, welcome to the club. So are most people that come to see me. But it really is, life-changing for them. As we know, as hypnotherapists, it really is. And a lot of these people have often maybe been in other types of therapies for years. I've seen somebody go, you've changed things in 2 or 3 sessions. And I've seen a counsellor or some other kind of person for 3, 4, 5 years. And I usually say to them, I'm obviously in the wrong job in one sense then. I said, because I could have been taking your money for all that time. But actually, we know we're not, because then they tell everybody else about us because they're so amazed at what they can achieve in a relatively short space of time.
Speaking to a little bit too of continuing through, hypnosis doesn't only just go clear trauma, clear the symptoms, clear the things. It can actually help you to move forward in a better way. I assume that you do that too. You're able to help expand confidence, motivation, sometimes if they need to change eating habits or things like that. Can you speak to that for just a minute?
I don't do a session. I do a 5-session program now for the people. And as you say, sometimes after those perhaps three of those sessions, you've made an enormous change, but there's always something that you can teach people and help people with. So I'll be teaching them things like self-hypnosis, different techniques or whatever. Or sometimes somebody will say, well, look, now I've done this. We've got 2 sessions left. Can you help me with that? And it's amazing what you can. And a lot of it's building that confidence and saying, you're good to go now. Things are really great. And they are. Then they go off and live their life. And that's really, really exciting. So,
yeah, wonderful. It sticks. It doesn't last for a couple of weeks. It lasts forever.
Because as we know, that programming and that part, whatever we want to call it, that has changed. It was relevant when it all started way back then, whether that was when somebody was 5, 15, 25. But it doesn't have to, nobody's almost told that part or that program. Nobody's updated it. So it's still running on the old software, and let's get some new software up and installed and running. So however that person can go off and lead a fulfilling life, whatever that means to them.
I love that. So I love that you do 5 sessions too. I think that's important to have that in place to move forward. And if you're good at a couple, that's wonderful. But let's make sure that we are doing it fully, completely for you in a way that's going to last forever.
The way I do it is it's spread over, because it's, again, just from experience, it's taught me to do this. So it's spread over like sort of 2 to 3 months. The first 2 or 3 where I'm seeing them quite close together. And then often at the end, it can be 5 weeks, but easily between our last 2 sessions. So that person's really confident. Yeah, I'm where I need to be. And it's always lovely when they come back in again, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's face to face, and I'm not really quite sure what I need this session for. And it's like, well, let me tell you, let's start teaching self-hypnosis and things like that. Or sometimes we do use that session for something else because something else has come up in the interim. Some of the people I see are living in very difficult situations and circumstances. Perhaps they're looking after or a carer for a very elderly relative or somebody who's very, very poorly ill. That's going to have an impact. So there's always things that you can help that person with or teach them.
For the people out there experiencing trauma, or whether they're aware of it or not, with the symptoms, anxiety, IBS, the other things that kind of come into play, what's the one thing that you'd really love for them to know right now?
How what they're experiencing now doesn't have to be permanent. And so many people that, well, this is just who I am. This is what's happened in my life and this is how it's going to be. No, it really, really doesn't, because something did happen and we're not diminishing that. Well, you know and I know we can't take memory memories away. Some people have been through some horrendous experiences, but they're still here. They're surviving. They may not feel like it, but they are. And hats off to anybody who's been through some awful stuff. But we can't take memories away, but we can start breaking that association, that emotional connection, so we can leave all that stuff in the past where it actually belongs, because otherwise we're almost like still living with it in the here and now, whatever day that is. I would really, really encourage any of your listeners, please get in touch with someone, a hypnotherapist, because it can change. And I always think that they can change more quickly than you realize.
I know. It's like magic. It's like magic. I love it. So how can they find you? How can they reach out to you, Helen?
So you can go to my website, which is, do you want me to say it, or do you have show notes? How does it work?
Go ahead and say it and I'll make sure it's in the show notes.
Okay. www.advance, so ADVANCE, as in going forward, Advanced Hypnotherapy, all one word, .biz is probably the easiest way to get in, because there's a contact form on there, and then I will get back to you.
And then you're on, I assume, on some socials?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, not on Twitter anymore, or you can just call me. So 07795832740.
Well, there you go. That's even better. Just hop on there and get it going right now. Thank you so much. Thanks for having this conversation with me, Helen. I truly appreciate it.
More than welcome.
All right, Change Gang. I hope that brought some information and some guidance to you. And I would love for you to go and reach out to Helen. And she's got some amazing skills to help you move forward in your life and clear the anxiety, clear the IBS. Don't live with it anymore. You don't have to. So don't. And I hope also that you have a great week and that you'll meet me right here, same time next week. Have a great one.
I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes. Or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.